a scam.
Yeah, my brother took in nothing through no scam.
Nevertheless, the Jacksons were convicted and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. They declined a formal interview.
Who was victimized by the Jackson brothers and their scam?
The government, Medicare, and us. Every one of us. We all have to pay.
Medicare is a money machine, sending out so many checks, it has to use high-tech automation just to keep the money flowing. More than $400 million every day. But government investigators have found that often Medicare doesn't know what it's paying for. And because of the sheer volume of payments, it can only review a fraction of its claims. Sound like a system ripe for abuse? Well, it is, according to federal investigators, who say that Medicare loses $46 million a day due to fraud. And you wouldn't believe some of the things your Medicare dollars are paying for.
They would supply Angora underwear, and they would bill for a wheelchair or a lymphedema pump or a hospital bed.
Angora underwear. As unbelievable as it may sound, federal investigator Linda Little says it shows scam artists will try anything to con elderly people out of their Medicare number.
What possible medical benefit could someone get from Angora underwear?
Angora underwear is not reimbursable as durable medical equipment.
So you, me, and all the other taxpayers were paying for somebody's Angora underwear.
Medicare's money was paying for somebody's Angora underwear, and there was a lot left over for the people actually doing the billing. It was a $13 million fraud case.
Linda Little says recruiters for a New York-based company called Universal Medical Supply would give a variety of gifts to elderly people in exchange for their Medicare numbers. Once they had the numbers, they made millions by falsely billing Medicare for expensive medical equipment. Universal's owners have pled guilty to Medicare fraud.
What else was Universal providing under the guise of legitimate medical equipment?
Massagers, one of them being like this.
What purpose could this have?
Oh, it's the Big Brute. It's a rechargeable massager.
And taxpayers were paying for this?
I guess it would feel pretty good, but it's not medical equipment. And yes, taxpayers pay for it.
You and I and everybody else paid for the Big Brute here.
We did.
This probably wasn't what they intended when Medicare was enacted. It was back on July 30th, 1965, that President Lyndon Johnson signed Medicare into law as part of his Great Society. And the program has helped millions of senior citizens with nowhere to turn for health care. Democratic Senator Tom Harkin has always supported Medicare, but is disgusted by the level of fraud.
Medicare, in most of these cases, they have no idea what they're even paying for. And that just sounds crazy, but it's true.
Part of the problem is that often Medicare doesn't make equipment suppliers itemize their bills. Instead, it uses categories that are so broad, Medicare can't tell whether it's paying for a pacemaker or a truckload of surgical sponges. Imagine paying your credit card bill if the charges were only broken down into broad categories like entertainment. Well, that's what Medicare is doing. In fact, an investigation of medical equipment payments conducted by the General Accounting Office found that well over half the money Medicare shelled out should not have been paid. Bruce Vladeck administers the Medicare program. He says the GAO estimate may be too high, but admits to problems.
Yeah, the kinds of claims GAO looked at, we've had real problems with, and we've had to change our procedures and our policies to deal with them.
How would you like to run a business like that? You're buying things you don't even know what you're buying. But that's what Medicare's doing.
Patients' we just handle those.
And what if Medicare wants to investigate a suspicious claim? Well, that depends on where the claim was made. As incredible as it sounds, in half the states, Medicare doesn't have any investigators. In fact, over the past 3 years, Medicare spending has risen by 23%, while the budget for Medicare investigators rose less than 1%.
They have no one there to investigate it. And so if you're one of these suppliers with medical supplies ripping off the system, you know what states don't have the Inspector General. That's where you go.
And the odds are you won't get caught.
You never get caught. Odds are infinitesimal that you'll ever get caught.
A fact that has not gone unnoticed by some of the most sophisticated criminals in the world. Medicare fraud is so profitable that some drug dealers in Miami, Florida have gone from slinging kilos to scamming the elderly out of their Medicare numbers.
If you don't have cops, people are going to commit a lot of crime. And for a long time, the federal government in previous administrations refused to invest in cops relative to healthcare fraud, including that against the program.
Is this a case where Congress is blaming the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats are blaming Congress, and the taxpayer is getting caught in the middle and paying the tab?
Well, everyone's to blame in this.
You're losing $46 million a day due to fraud, which to many people is just a mind-boggling number.
It's mind-boggling altogether.
$2 million an hour.
Well, all I can tell you is, when we got here, we found that there were lots and lots of holes in the dike, and we've been patching them as fast as we can. I think we're beginning to start to turn that around.
But in fact, the problem may get worse. Congress is currently debating proposals to cut back on efforts to weed out Medicare fraud. Medicare's Inspector General says the proposed cuts are so severe they would cripple the efforts of law enforcement.
All right, we're out of here. I'm going to go this way.
And even if you see a problem, getting the attention of law enforcement isn't always easy. Meet Jim Quinn. His 91-year-old father is in a Nebraska nursing home. Jim receives copies of his father's Medicare statements.
Jim, when was it that you figured out that something just wasn't right on these Medicare statements for your father?
When I opened the envelope and saw a $10,000 statement.
$10,000 for a month's worth of bandages to treat a small wound on his father's leg.
There's your animal.
A bill Jim Quinn says should have been just $1,000.
We could bandage this whole nursing home in the course of a month's time with $10,000 worth of bandages.
First month was $10,000, next month was $12,000, $12,000 again, $8,000, all for bandages.
Exactly. And you total that up and put a number to it, it's around $44,000.
$44,000 for bandages.
Yeah.
Jim Quinn decided to put a stop to it, but he says when he called Medicare, he got transferred and put on hold so many times, he finally gave up. When he called the company supplying the bandages, he says they told him not to worry. It wasn't his money. So he started writing letters to Washington and finally got the payment stopped. The company supplying the bandages went out of business.
Did Medicare ever call you and say, hey, thanks,
No.
thanks for pointing this out,
No.
thanks for saving us $10,000 a month?
No.
Not a thank you.
No. Not even an attaboy.
If the estimates are correct, just while you've been watching this story, Medicare has lost another $406,107.
If you notice something suspicious on your Medicare...
Okay. This is a master piece of work done by the General Accounting Office, and as I told you before, it's one of the most efficient governmental agencies in our country because they did not politicize their work. They criticize Congress openly. They report everything very honestly. And what you have seen is a very, very bad case, as a matter of fact. I want you to take 2 minutes on your own to put your thoughts on a piece of paper, and we are going to bring it to an open discussion.